Hi everyone, this is Suzanne, and I thought I would kind of talk a little bit about the astrology and not the astrology that's happening in the world, but astrology in general. And the reason I'm doing this is that I do not believe that you are limited by your astrological chart. I believe that your chart is an indication of the things that you were wanting to learn and how you were wanting to grow. And you set it up with certain lessons so that you could kind of have those experiences and then be able to grow and learn that way. But I don't want people to think that, your astrological chart is sort of set in stone and that's it, and you're never going to be able to change out of that, because I do believe that everyone can change. I had a friend of mine who was a Vedic astrologer, and she studied in India, learned Hindu, was there for 10 years working with two Vedic astrologers, and they would never let her read their chart. And when she finally went to leave, they said, okay, now you can read our chart. And she looked at their chart and she said, you guys aren't anything like this chart. And they said, yeah, that's the point. Everything can be transcended. It takes a tremendous amount of consciousness. But if you understand your natal chart and what you came in to learn, and you don't shy away from that, and you embrace that, and you embrace the challenges of that, you can actually transcend and move beyond that. And then the chart no longer controls you, because while you might notice that you still have some of those tendencies actually aren't controlling your actions or your behaviors. So that's, to me, the value of astrology, is to kind of look at it, things, and go, what was I really going for here? What was I really learning? So I wanted to kind of bring it up because when the Vedic astrologers look at my chart, I mean, they freak out. Like every time they freak out. They look at my chart and they're like, you're Mongolic. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm Mongolic. And they're like, well, that's bad. That's like really bad. I'm like, I understand that that's your perception, your Indian perception of something, that there's aspects in my chart that are really challenging. And there's a big misperception that people have, that they think powerful people, famous people, wealthy people, conscious people have easy charts, and they actually don't. They have super shitty charts, and they usually have some massive challenges that they went through when they were younger that sort of shaped and molded their personality, that you can continue to see it reflected in their choices and actions and what they leave as a legacy in their life, that it was actually shaped from their childhood. So I want everybody to understand that, because, people will be like, oh, I have a difficult chart, or I have a hard chart. And I'm like, no, let's not think about that like that. I mean, I see the aspects of my chart as something that I needed to push against, and that I'm a personality that if you don't give me something to push against, then I will kind of look for a challenge. I mean, and that's been really clear to me throughout my whole entire life, that I finally realized at some point that if I didn't go for something in a really intense sort of way, I would probably be bored. If I wasn't surrounded by interesting, unusual people, I would probably be bored. So there was a point in my 20s when I realized that I think I chose this. I think I chose bizarre, eclectic, unusual, different. I think I didn't want to be bored. And so instead of being pissed off about it, I decided to just completely embrace it. And it was the same thing related to the different physicality aspects related to my chart. And so, as a psychic, you can imagine that I'm very sensitive, and I'm very sensitive to different things, and that is good and that's bad. I mean, it's sort of like an Achilles heel at some point. There's places that I really need to be away from people, and so I can get psychically overloaded and overwhelmed if there's too much of a particular type of energy hitting me sort of all at once. And that does not mean that I shied away from it. Quite the contrary, because I try and operate from a Vajrayana Buddhist perspective, which is how can I engage this energy consciously, safely, and constructively without causing myself any damage that then I'm going to have to heal later? So how can I go in the direction of things that frighten me, but do it in a way that I'm not freaking out and shutting down? And because of my sensitivity and the sensitivity that is in my chart, that can be very difficult. That can be really difficult. So, like I said, the Vedic astrologers call me Mongolic, and Mongolic basically means I'm deformed, and I'm weird. And I've had lots of astrologers look at my chart and go, "You have an alien construct in your chart. You are so odd. Like, you don't operate the way most people do, and most people who have your aspect in your chart commit suicide because they get psychically overwhelmed with things." And so people, don't understand, when you have a sensitivity like mine, that little things can really be much bigger to me, and that's because it's my job to pinpoint usually what a problem is or what an issue is. And so what terrifies me is when I see people doing a pattern over and over that is so incredibly destructive to them, and then sometimes it will end up being destructive to other people because they will blame other people rather than take responsibility. And when I see patterns like that, I just go, whoa, I have to step back. But, what I've discovered about my literal physical body is, like, as the geneticists say to me, because I have so many weird things with my body, it's just completely ridiculous. The doctors look at me and they say, you should have a multitude of problems, and you don't. But the reason I don't is that I don't resist what is. I exercise, I take herbs, I meditate, I play tennis, I try to do things that keep myself moving and keep myself engaged and in gear, because I recognize that there are these tendencies in my body for energy to build up, and that negative energy also can build up, and that can be highly destructive. And so, literally the geneticists say, tease and say to me, they say, when the sperm entered the egg in the first 20 divisions, yours totally messed up, like on 20 different levels. And they just look at me and they go, you have no pain, you should have pain, you should have all these things, and you don't, and we're just going to leave you alone because we don't know why you don't, but we're just going to leave you alone. And I think pain is a symptom of unresolved karma. And don't get me wrong, I've had plenty of pain in my life, but instead of shying away from pain, I've tried to embrace pain. And don't get me wrong, again, I have not been perfect at this by a long shot. I have failed miserably many times. I've worked for 10, 20 years on working through a particular pattern, but I don't see pain as personal. Which I think a lot of people do. It's like, I'm hurting, so I'm fucked up or whatever. It's like, I see pain as a symptom of something that I need to look at. Like the pain is going, hello, like, you need to go over here. You need to pay attention over here. And I try to do that. I try and meditate. And as Pema Chodron would say, I try and sit in the Shempa, sit in the misery of something. So to sit in the pain, to sit in the suffering, to sit in the discontent, to sit in the fear, to sit in the anger. And I try to do that. And like I said, I am not pretending in any way, shape, and form to be an enlightened master by a long shot. I am simply sharing the little bit of knowing that I've gathered along the way. And what I find is, if you resist pain, it tends to get louder. And if you embrace pain, there is a transcendence that happens. So many years ago, I was in a Vipassana meditation course, and it was a month long, in silence, 12 hours a day meditating. And talk about grueling. I mean, this is meditation grueling 101. And I've got a lot of discipline, but boy, my knee just started to really hurt me. And it did not matter what position I was in. I was just in agony. And so the teacher is saying softly, now we're supposed to remain still, and I am just like antsy and irritated and frustrated and aggravated, and all this anger keeps coming up. And so I, keep feeling into my knee, and I just kind of keep trying to push energy through my knee and into my knee, and, to create a circuit. And I could feel like my knee was like a lead ball, and energy was going around this lead ball, but it wasn't going through the lead ball. And so I just kept lovingly and compassionately to myself, saying, I get it, you're hurting, I get you have a message for me, I'm trying to listen to the message, please let me hear what that message is. And finally, I got it. I mean, it only took, 7 days of meditating. And when I was 13 years old, I was at a Richmond, Virginia choreographic conference that I'd gotten a scholarship to. And Maria Tallchief, who was a famous ballerina, beautiful famous ballerina, Indian teacher. And she had hyperextended knees, and I do not have hyperextended knees. And she had super pointy feet, and I did not have the super pointy feet. So there's like an S that happens from the toe through the knee up through the thigh when you have hyperextended feet and hyperextended knees. And I just can't do that. My legs don't do that. So she is screaming at me, straighten your knees, straighten your knees, straighten your knees. And I keep trying to jump and straighten my knees. And what I did was I tore my meniscus. And so in the meditation, what I realized was that I was angry at her, that she was screaming at me to straighten my knees when I couldn't do my knees her way. I was angry at myself for caring what she said at all, and caring that, her opinion mattered to me in any way, shape, and form. And then I was angry at myself that, I just didn't accept myself for who I was. And so there were 3 levels of anger in my knee that were blocking my knee. And I'm sharing this because I think people need to understand, like they say, well, I did this process, but I still have the pain. And I'm like, well, then you're not done. I mean, I've worked on things for 20 years. I mean, it's ridiculous how many layers of things there are. And one of the things the guide said to me was, they said, everyone has about 300 years worth of emotional healing to do. And I remember thinking, oh my God, we're never going to get through this. How do we possibly get through 300 years worth of emotional healing to do? And the answer is that it's all around certain issues. My issues in this lifetime have been really dealing with fear and anger and resentment, fear, anger, and resentment, trying to work through those issues in my life and just noticing how I deny them. Like, I worked through anger for years and years, thought I was really good, and then found I had resentment. And I thought, wow, I thought resentment and anger were the same, but they're actually not. And so then I had 2 more years of working through resentment in order to get through that. And I'm not saying, again, I'm through it all, but I'm just saying, I'm willing to embrace what is and what it comes up in the moment, and just to go, oh, wow, Suzanne, notice you're angry. Just notice that. Like, why are you angry right here? Oh, you're hurt. Oh, you're actually not angry. You're actually hurt. Oh, you're just trying to defend yourself. Like, oh, okay. And so to try and help you understand how to navigate through these places and navigate through the astrology in your own chart. So, my chart, the Vedic astrologers, they say to me, well, you should be like you should be unable to function, right? And I kind of laugh and I go, well, I'm a retired principal ballet dancer. And they're like, that's not possible. That's not possible. And I'm like, no, that's possible. I mean, they literally don't want to believe me. They literally think I'm making up a story. Like, they literally think it's not true somehow. And then I say, well, I'm a published author. And they're like, well, that's just not possible. That's just not possible. And I wanted to say that today in a video because I want people to realize that it's only impossible in your mind. It's only impossible because you believe the limitations of your body. It's not that it actually is impossible. But yes, you will have to confront a lot of things. And yes, you will have to go through all your scariest places to be able to discover what's really true. And I just go, don't be afraid of your own darkness in your chart. Don't be afraid of the places where you're still all screwed up. Because that's where the best yummies are and the best growth can be. And that's where it can be very exciting and fun if you embrace it. It can be terrifying if you don't embrace it. And again, I've spent years denying things and resisting things, and just because I'm 59 at this point, I just go, like there's no point in pretending to be something that I'm not. There's no point in pretending to not be afraid. when I'm afraid. There's no point in, not letting people know that they're being inappropriate or they're hurting you. And you can do it in as loving and as kind of a way without lashing out, and people will still not like it. But it's again about you being complete and whole within yourself. And what I find is suppressing emotion, suppressing the truth creates dangerous reactions like violence. And so you really need to kind of say, I'm angry. You just said that I'm angry at the first moment rather than wait 5 years. And then there's like a straw that broke the camel's back and you're so angry now that you overreact to something. And so, the reason I'm doing this, I'm doing a COVID special at the moment where you get an hour with me and I will put together your natal chart for you from my favorite places, and it's written out for you so that you can look at it, is that I think that you can never discover enough in your own natal chart, and every reader's perspective is slightly different, and every reader that's read me has almost always given me some critical piece of insight. And so once again, my way is not the only way. My way is not the perfect way. My way is a way. It's a way that I find valuable, and that's been really insightful to me, but it is absolutely not the only way. So embrace who you are. Embrace this chart that is you. Embrace that it is a narrow reflection of who you really truly are. It's just one shading of your essence and who you really are. And don't let the restrictions in this lifetime limit you. Push past them, push into them, lean into the edges of your fear, lean into the edges of what is not your best thing, and discover, new tools and new techniques, because I think we're all down here playing and trying to discover what we want to do in our next lifetime. So it's like I got to be the ballerina, writer, psychic in this lifetime, but what do I want to do in my next lifetime? And start to play with some very new things that are maybe not my talents and skills and abilities, to decide whether I like some of those things. So in my next lifetime, I can do them, in an exciting, embracing sort of way. Okay. So I hope that was sort of fun and interesting for you guys. Talk to you later.